On a cliff, overlooking the restless Atlantic Ocean stands Seaview Terrace, a mansion that looks like it was carved from ambition itself. To the outside world, it appears timeless, proud, and untouchable. Stone walls rise with confidence, windows stare out like watchful eyes, and the sea below crashes endlessly, as if reminding the house that nothing built by humans can truly last forever. Seaview Terrace was not created as a home filled with warmth. It was created as a statement. Every arch, every hall, every towering fireplace existed to prove power, success, and social dominance. The mansion was meant to silence doubt and command respect. But inside those massive rooms, the echo of footsteps often replaced laughter, and grandeur slowly turned into emotional distance. The family who lived there possessed wealth that most could only dream of. Yet that wealth came with crushing expectations. Society watched them constantly. They were expected to entertain endlessly, maintain appearances flawlessly, and never show weakness. Behind closed doors, pressure built quietly. The mansion did not protect them from fear, it amplified it. Its size made problems feel smaller to outsiders, but inside, those problems felt enormous and impossible to escape. As the world outside began to change, the mansion remained frozen in time. Economic realities shifted, old fortunes weakened, and the lifestyle Seaview Terrace was built for started to disappear. What once symbolized success slowly became a reminder of decline. Maintaining the house became harder, emptier, and emotionally exhausting. Grandeur turned into obligation. Pride turned into weight. Hollywood later arrived and transformed Seaview Terrace into something else entirely, a legend. Cameras softened its darkness. Films framed its halls as romantic, mysterious, and glamorous. Audiences fell in love with the image, unaware that the real story was far more unsettling. The mansion became famous, not for the lives lived inside it, but for the illusion projected onto screens. Yet if those walls could speak, they would not tell stories of glamour alone. They would whisper about loneliness, about nights spent surrounded by luxury but starved of peace. They would speak of a family trying to hold on to relevance, as time quietly pulled it away. They would tell us that even the most powerful structures cannot protect humans from change, fear, and loss. Today, Seaview Terrace stands as a paradox. It is admired, filmed, and remembered. Yet its true legacy is not joy or triumph. It is a reminder that wealth can build monuments, but it cannot guarantee happiness. Hollywood turned it into a legend, but history left behind a shadow, forever etched into stone overlooking the sea. Seaview Terrace was built as a symbol of wealth and permanence, but beneath its towering stone walls lived a quiet, persistent fear of social collapse and fading power. When the mansion first rose above the Atlantic coastline, it was meant to send a single, unmistakable message: this family had arrived, and they intended to stay forever. Every block of stone was chosen to look indestructible. Every window placed to dominate the horizon, as if staring down time itself. The house was designed not just to shelter people, but to challenge the future, to declare that money, lineage, and influence could outlast any change the world might bring. Yet the very need to build something so massive revealed an insecurity that wealth could not erase. The era that gave birth to Seaview Terrace was unstable beneath its glittering surface. Old social hierarchies were beginning to crack. New money threatened old names. Industrial growth was reshaping power faster than tradition could control it. The mansion was a fortress against that uncertainty, a physical attempt to freeze status in stone before it slipped away. Inside, luxury felt overwhelming rather than comforting. Vast rooms stretched farther than voices could carry, making conversations feel small and fragile. The ceilings soared high above, impressive to guests, but isolating to those who lived beneath them daily. The house demanded to be admired, yet it offered little warmth in return. It was not built for intimacy or ease. It was built to impress a society that the owners feared losing respect from. The family understood, even if they never said it aloud, that their power was not guaranteed. Every lavish dinner, every grand event held within those walls was less a celebration and more a performance. Appearances had to be flawless, because reputation was everything. The mansion became a stage where weakness was forbidden. Smiles hid anxiety. Silence covered doubt. The house stood firm, but the people inside felt increasingly vulnerable. As years passed, the world outside moved faster than the mansion could adapt. Economic tides shifted, and the certainty that once justified such excess began to erode. What was meant to represent permanence slowly became a reminder of how fragile power truly is. Maintenance grew costly, not just financially but emotionally. Each repair felt like a fight against inevitability. Each passing season reinforced the truth that no structure, no matter how grand, could stop time from advancing. Seaview Terrace, in its imposing beauty, became a contradiction. It stood for stability while sheltering fear. It projected dominance while quietly witnessing decline. The stone walls remained unmoved, but the confidence that built them weakened year by year. What was meant to be eternal slowly revealed itself as a monument not just to wealth, but to the anxiety of losing it. Its owners lived surrounded by luxury, yet haunted by isolation, pressure, and unspoken family tensions. From the outside, life inside Seaview Terrace appeared flawless. Servants moved silently through endless corridors. Chandeliers glowed above polished floors. And every need was met before it was spoken. Yet comfort did not bring closeness. The scale of the mansion created distance, not connection. Family members often existed in separate wings, living parallel lives under the same roof, rarely sharing moments that felt genuine or unguarded. Luxury became a kind of barrier. Rooms were too grand for honest conversations, too formal for vulnerability. Words echoed and lost their meaning before they reached the far walls. Even disagreements were softened into silence, not because harmony existed, but because conflict had nowhere safe to land. Tension was absorbed by the house itself, lingering in hallways and behind closed doors. What was never said became heavier than what was spoken. The pressure to uphold the family's image weighed constantly on every member of the household. Each person was expected to embody success, refinement, and emotional control at all times. There was no room for failure, doubt, or weakness. Children learned early that reputation mattered more than feelings. Adults carried the burden of sustaining a legacy that demanded perfection while offering little peace in return. Isolation grew quietly. Despite being surrounded by staff, guests, and social events, the owners often felt alone. True companionship was rare because trust was risky. Every visitor was a potential judge, every friend a possible rival. Privacy existed only in theory. In reality, the mansion was always watching, always reminding its residents of who they were supposed to be. Unspoken family tensions settled deep into daily life. Rivalries, disappointments, and unmet expectations were never resolved, only endured. The house preserved them like artifacts, locking them into routines and traditions that could not be questioned. Generations carried forward the same emotional distance, mistaking restraint for strength and silence for dignity. At night, when the grand halls emptied and the ocean winds pressed against the windows, the mansion felt less like a home and more like a vast, echoing reminder of everything left unsaid. Surrounded by wealth beyond imagination, its owners lay awake with thoughts they could never share, trapped by the very luxury that was meant to protect them. The mansion's grandeur was designed to impress society, not to provide peace to those inside it. Every element of its architecture existed for the outside gaze. The towering facade, the perfectly aligned windows, the dramatic staircases, none of it was meant to comfort the people who lived there day after day. It was meant to stop visitors in their tracks, to overwhelm them with scale and elegance before a single word was spoken. The house itself delivered the first impression, and it was powerful, intimidating, and impossible to ignore. Inside, beauty came with rigidity. Rooms followed strict symmetry. Furniture was arranged for appearance rather than ease, and movement through the house felt choreographed. Nothing invited relaxation. Even sitting down felt like a performance, as though the mansion expected its occupants to remain dignified at all times. Peace requires softness, but Seaview Terrace was built on sharp lines, hard stone, and formal distance. The grandeur demanded constant maintenance, both physical and emotional. Everything had to be perfect, every polished surface, every curtain, every carefully chosen object. Any flaw felt like a personal failure, not just of upkeep but of identity. The owners lived with the anxiety that something might slip, something might crack, and the illusion of perfection would collapse. Rest became impossible when the house itself required vigilance. Social events reinforced this imbalance. Guests admired the mansion, praised its beauty, and spoke of it as a triumph. But once the last carriage left and the lights dimmed, the emptiness returned. The silence after admiration felt heavier than before, exposing how little warmth the grandeur provided. The house could impress hundreds in a single evening, yet fail to comfort even one person afterward. Over time, the mansion shaped behavior. Emotions were restrained, voices softened, and personal struggles, hidden behind impeccable presentation. There was no room for disorder, and therefore no room for emotional release. The house rewarded control, not peace. It encouraged endurance, not healing. What appeared majestic from afar became exhausting from within. The grandeur that dazzled society slowly drained those who lived inside it. Seaview Terrace stood as a masterpiece of status and design, but its beauty was outward, facing. Inside, peace was sacrificed for impression, and the cost was paid quietly by those who called it home. Economic shifts and changing times quietly turned the house from a triumph into a burden. When Seaview Terrace was first completed, wealth felt permanent and unstoppable. The fortunes that built it seemed immune to risk, supported by industries and systems believed to be unshakable. Maintaining a mansion of such scale was once a sign of strength, proof that resources would never run dry. But history has a way of moving forward without asking permission. As decades passed, the economic world began to change in ways the mansion was never designed to survive. Old sources of wealth weakened, markets fluctuated, and financial security became less predictable. What once felt like a confident investment slowly revealed itself as an enormous liability. The cost of upkeep rose relentlessly, heating vast rooms, repairing aging stone, maintaining grounds that demanded constant labor. Every bill carried the quiet reminder that the house consumed far more than it gave back. The lifestyle that justified the mansion also faded. Lavish gatherings became rarer, not because the house had lost its beauty, but because society itself was changing. Displays of excess no longer inspired admiration, they invited scrutiny. What was once celebrated as success began to feel out of place, even embarrassing. The mansion stood frozen in a past that the world was leaving behind. Emotionally, the burden grew heavier. The owners felt trapped between pride and practicality. Letting go of the house felt like admitting defeat, yet holding on to it required sacrifice after sacrifice. Resources that could have supported new opportunities were instead poured into preserving an image that no longer carried the same meaning. The mansion demanded loyalty, long after it stopped rewarding it. Time exposed the truth that grandeur ages differently than people. As society adapted, the house resisted change, stubbornly clinging to a scale and purpose that no longer fit modern life. Rooms went unused, wings fell silent, and once celebrated spaces became reminders of decline. The triumph of its construction slowly transformed into the weight of its existence. What began as a proud symbol of permanence became a daily struggle against relevance and survival. The house still stood tall, but now it stood heavy, no longer a victory, but a responsibility that quietly drained those who refused to let it go. Hollywood later transformed the mansion into a symbol of elegance, masking its darker emotional history. When cameras first entered its halls, they did not come searching for truth. They came searching for beauty. The mansion's stone walls, sweeping staircases, and ocean-facing windows were framed through soft light and careful angles, turning lived-in spaces into visual fantasies. On screen, Seaview Terrace became timeless, graceful, and romantic? Stripped of the weight it once carried for those who actually lived there. Film has a way of erasing discomfort. The silence that once felt oppressive was rebranded as mystery. The vast rooms that magnified loneliness became symbols of refinement and power. Viewers saw elegance, not emptiness, grandeur, not emotional strain. The mansion was reborn as a backdrop for fictional lives, far more glamorous than the real ones it had quietly confined. This transformation reshaped public memory. The house stopped being known as a place of pressure and isolation, and instead became a cultural icon. Its darker past was buried beneath scripted dialogue and polished performances. The struggles of its former owners were replaced by fictional romances, dramatic confrontations, and cinematic triumphs. What had once been real pain was edited out of the frame. Ironically, Hollywood gave the mansion the attention it had always been built for. But too late and for the wrong reasons. The admiration it received now was effortless, unconditional, and detached from responsibility. No one asked what it cost to live there. No one saw the emotional toll hidden behind those beautiful shots. The house was finally loved, but only as an image. As a result, the mansion's identity split in two. On screen, it existed as a dream of wealth and sophistication. In reality, it remained a silent witness to years of anxiety, decline, and unspoken suffering. The contrast was stark. The same walls that once absorbed fear now reflected spotlights and applause. Hollywood did not change the mansion. It changed the story people told about it. By turning Seaview Terrace into a symbol of elegance, it softened history and replaced truth with fantasy. The darkness did not disappear. It was simply hidden behind a perfect frame, forever overshadowed by the legend created for the screen. Behind its stone walls, silence often replaced celebration, and rooms felt more like monuments than homes. The mansion was filled with spaces meant for grand occasions, ballrooms designed for music and laughter, dining halls built to host long tables of guests, corridors wide enough to carry crowds. Yet more often than not, these rooms stood empty. The silence that settled into them was not peaceful. It was heavy, echoing with what was supposed to happen there, but never truly did. Celebrations became rare and restrained. Even when guests were present, the atmosphere felt formal, controlled, almost distant. Laughter never lingered long enough to soften the stone. Conversations stayed polite and measured, as if the walls themselves demanded restraint. Once the events ended and the doors closed, the house returned to its natural state, stillness. The quiet was so complete that it felt deliberate, as though the mansion had been built to absorb joy before it could take hold. The rooms were impressive, but emotionally cold. Each one stood as a tribute to wealth, taste, and status rather than comfort or belonging. Furniture was arranged to be admired, not used. Fireplaces were grand, but rarely warm. Bedrooms felt more like carefully preserved exhibits than places of rest. Nothing invited someone to linger, to relax, or to feel at ease. Living there meant adapting to the house, instead of the house adapting to its occupants. Daily life unfolded with formality, even in private moments. Small, human habits, casual conversations, spontaneous laughter, shared meals, felt out of place in spaces designed to impress rather than nurture. Over time, the family learned to move quietly, speak softly, and exist without leaving emotional traces behind. The mansion became a collection of monuments to ambition rather than rooms shaped by memory. Unlike true homes, which carry the warmth of repeated moments, these spaces preserved distance. They remembered architecture, not affection. They held history, not comfort. In this way, the silence behind the stone walls told its own story. It revealed a life where appearance outweighed intimacy, and where grandeur slowly erased the ordinary joys that make a house feel alive. The mansion witnessed the slow decay of an American elite lifestyle that could not adapt. When it was first built, that lifestyle seemed unshakable, rooted in inherited wealth, rigid social rules, and the belief that status alone guaranteed relevance. Seaview Terrace was designed to serve that world perfectly, with its formal rooms, strict hierarchies, and carefully controlled public image. It reflected a time when power moved slowly and tradition was treated as authority. But the world beyond its walls began to change. Society grew less impressed by old names and more focused on innovation, mobility, and new ideas. Wealth no longer stayed confined to a single class, and influence shifted toward people who could adapt quickly. The elite rituals that once defined importance, formal dinners, seasonal gatherings, exclusive circles, started to feel outdated, even disconnected from reality. Inside the mansion, routines remained frozen. The same customs were followed long after they stopped making sense. The house became a museum of habits that no longer matched the world outside. What once signaled refinement now suggested rigidity. The elite lifestyle the mansion was built to protect slowly became a performance without an audience. The decay was not sudden or dramatic. It unfolded quietly through smaller gatherings, unused rooms, and traditions repeated out of obligation rather than belief. The family clung to structure because structure was all they knew. Adaptation would have meant admitting that the rules had changed. And that was a truth too uncomfortable to face. As relevance faded, so did confidence. The mansion absorbed this decline, standing tall, while the purpose it once served dissolved. It sheltered a way of life that could not bend, and therefore could not survive. The walls remained solid, but the identity they supported weakened year by year. In the end, Seaview Terrace did not fall. It outlasted its own meaning. It became a silent observer of an elite world that refused to evolve, preserving the slow unraveling of a lifestyle that believed itself eternal. Its legacy survives more through myth and film than through the happiness of those who built it. The mansion is remembered today, not for the lives lived within its walls, but for the stories imagined around it. Cinema and popular culture reshaped Seaview Terrace into a symbol of timeless elegance, allowing audiences to fall in love with an illusion rather than a reality. What endures is the image, the sweeping views, the grand staircases, the sense of old world glamour, carefully detached from the emotional cost that created it. The people who built the mansion believed they were securing joy, stability, and remembrance. They invested their wealth into stone, convinced that permanence would protect their legacy. Yet what remained was not happiness, but a structure others could reinterpret. Their private struggles, quiet disappointments, and unresolved tensions faded into obscurity, overshadowed by the fantasies projected onto the house, long after they were gone. Myth is easier to preserve than truth. Films replaced real memories with dramatic scenes that never happened, filling empty rooms with fictional laughter and passion. In doing so, the mansion gained a second life, one far more celebrated than its first. Audiences remember the stories told on screen, not the silence that once filled the halls when the cameras were gone. The irony is unavoidable. The house achieved immortality only after it stopped being a home. It became famous once it no longer had to serve the emotional needs of a family. The recognition it receives now costs nothing from its occupants, because there are none left to bear the weight of it. In this way, Seaview Terrace stands as a reminder that legacy does not always honor intention. Stone can outlast people, but it cannot preserve their peace. What survives is the myth, polished, beautiful, and incomplete, while the happiness that was once hoped for quietly disappeared with those who built it. And so, Seaview Terrace remains standing on the edge of the ocean, not as a monument to joy, but as a monument to ambition. Its stone walls still command admiration. Its silhouette still captures imaginations. Yet the truth lingers beneath the legend. This mansion was never just a backdrop for elegance. It was a witness to fear, pressure, and the slow unraveling of a dream that believed wealth could defeat time. Hollywood may have turned it into a symbol of beauty, but history left something far more human behind, a quiet warning that grandeur without peace becomes a prison, and that legacies, built only to impress the world, often forget the lives meant to live inside them.